All right, I think we're live. Push one in the chat if you can hear me. All right, got a confirmation. Thank you for the confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 837, Black Economics Talk. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust. There's a document description beneath the video for you to follow along with and reference. If you want to join the panel, there'll be a Zoom link in the chat pinned to the top. Just make sure you have the latest Zoom client before you join, then we can get started. Let me grab that link for you. All right, then we can get started. Let me know you can see my screen. All right. Start with the first item on the docket. This is from AJC.com. Forbes hosts star-studded summit on Black entrepreneurship in Atlanta. The inaugural Forbes Black Summit brought professionals from across the world to the city. Zoom in. Hundreds of Black professionals and entrepreneurs from across the world descended on downtown Atlanta this week for the inaugural Forbes Black Summit, a two-day conference exploring Black entrepreneurship. The summit is part of the larger brand of Forbes Black, a new community, the business publication launched in May this year to bring Black entrepreneurs and leaders from across the globe together. Quote, to have Forbes recognize Atlanta and to bring their event here means a tremendous amount of to the Atlanta and our Black businesses and those that aspire to be Black entrepreneurs. Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. It means that Atlanta is thought of and well regarded and is on the map. The summit started Sunday evening with a welcome party. Monday featured panels that brought in experts from a range of industries. The day started with a fireside chat with actress Lala Anthony discussing her career trajectory from radio intern in Atlanta to movies and TV. Other panels included one on the business of sports, featuring executives from the different NBA teams to DEI officials from Google, Microsoft, and AT&T discussing corporate diversity strategies. Ronna Coleman is an attorney, entrepreneur, and member of Forbes Black based in Detroit. She traveled to Atlanta for the first time just to attend the summit. To have us be the focal point, I thought that was very dope, Coleman said. The summit was also the site of a surprise announcement. Philadelphia-based real estate investment firm, the Steinbridge Group announced it would be investing $100 million in HBCUs to help them manage their land holdings, though the exact details of the investment have not yet been decided. Tawan Davis, founding partner and CEO of Steinbridge, said he hopes to work with Atlanta schools. Some sessions featured unexpected voices, and entertainer and entrepreneur Nick Cannon spoke on a panel about doing business in Africa. He talked about how his relationship with the continent had moved from just philanthropy to now expanding his improv hip hop comedy brand Wild 'N Out. Kanan said he has had talks with contacts in Nigeria about the potential expansion. Jabari Young, the editorial lead of Forbes Black, helped conceive of the summit, though initially he was planning on taking it to Washington, but former Atlanta Mayor Kasim Reed helped persuade Young to bring the conference to the city. Quote, we wanted to make sure that to start this event, we represent and we respect Atlanta for what it is. And if you try to ignore Atlanta for not being a place where Black entrepreneurs can thrive, then you're not reading the city right. Young said Forbes is about teaching its audience about people that they need to know. He sees Forbes Black as a way to broaden that lens. Quote, I feel like there's enough Black people in 2023 that you need to know, and I want to find them, he said. The summit also had a marketplace featuring several Black-owned businesses like Atlanta Clothing, Dio Women. Local business leaders were also featured throughout the day, like Pat Adams, global head of supplier diversity at Equifax, and Melvin Coleman, president and CEO of the Atlanta Black Chambers, who spoke on how businesses can get potentially lucrative supply contracts with large businesses. Though next year's conference hasn't been set yet, Young said it will also likely be in Atlanta. Here's my take on this. I don't really have a problem with Black summits. I'm a big advocate of Black summits, but what I don't like is when we rely on people outside the community to host events for us that we can already have on our own, right? And I don't have a problem with Forbes, but I just think that when Forbes shoves itself in there as Forbes Black, that's kind of diluting what we need to be doing ourselves, right? And so I'm not trying to shit on Forbes or the event. I think it's actually a good idea, but I just think that when you have something like Forbes Black, because Black people don't own Forbes. And so that's where I have the challenge, because, okay, how much money is Forbes putting into the Atlanta, and what does that even mean? Like, the Essence Festival makes a lot of sense because Essence is Black owned and Black started. When you talk about Forbes, I have a bit of a question there as to what they're actually doing, because Forbes makes a lot of money. And so how much money are they investing into Black entrepreneurs? I don't know. It wasn't really a whole lot of details. Having these summits, what that does is it kind of moves a lot of Black people around and gets them having these networking events, but it doesn't actually materialize on the ground. But we'll wait and see. I just think that when we have these conversations about Black entrepreneurships, there has to be a real discussion about access to capital. And based on this article, I didn't see anything about, the stymieing of Black people access to capital, what's happening with affirmative action, and what's happening with the venture capitalists, issues with Black women in venture capital. There's a lot of things that can be discussed, but it doesn't seem to be discussed here. And not saying anything negative about the event. I just think that Forbes has to be looking at everything that's happening in real time and saying, hey, the data doesn't lie. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but the data doesn't lie. If Black people don't have access to capital, nothing is going to get off the ground. Having an event about entrepreneurship and not actually talking about the access to the capital doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But I wish them the best, man. I think that, the shiny Forbes brand, maybe it can bring in some investment there. But if they're not the ones investing, I don't think they should be actually doing these type of things. So that's my take on that. All right, let me get to the next item on the docket. All right, next item on the docket is from abcnews.go. Black entrepreneurs awarded $25,000 grants to grow their businesses. Black Entrepreneurs Day says it has awarded thousands in grants since 2020. Despite a gradual slowdown in investment opportunities for Black businesses, Damon John is determined to rewrite the narrative through Black Entrepreneurs Day. John, CEO of Fugu and co-star of ABC's Shark Tank, started Black Entrepreneurs Day in 2020 to celebrate innovation and enterprise in the Black community. Black Entrepreneurs Day, which held their annual event Wednesday, says it has awarded more than $750,000 in business grants since 2020. Quote, the need for resources and community support for our Black businesses remains paramount. I salute our partners who, year after year, support our mission to educate and inspire Black entrepreneurs around the globe, John told ABC News. In 2020, following George Floyd's death, Black founders raised a record $4.3 billion in venture capital and corporate investments. However, amid increased market uncertainty, financing for Black businesses dropped by 45%, outpacing the 36% decline in overall VC funding in 2022. CNBC reported. 9 entrepreneurs were selected to win $25,000 each during Black Entrepreneurs Day star-studded event at Harlem Apollo Theater. New York City Mayor Eric Adams presented John with an official Black Entrepreneurs Day proclamation. The winners, representing industries ranging from food to financial services and lawn care, won more than $200,000 through the NAACP Power Shift Entrepreneur Grant. Applicants were required to share their visions for their businesses, describe the challenges they face so far, and explain how they plan to use the grant funding in full. Ashley Sutton, the Salesforce-sponsored recipient of a $25,000 grant, said she has big plans to revolutionize the greeting cards industry. Quote, I wanted to dive in headfirst with something that had a personal meaning to me. I wanted to disrupt the $7 billion industry that hasn't been innovated since pop-ups in music, Sutton told ABC News. Sutton created Hustle and Hope in 2019 to do just that. Sutton said her love for greeting cards bloomed through her family tradition of giving her special notes for every occasion. Using her 13 years of marketing experience, she came up with the idea to merge the digital and physical experience by embedding a downloadable guides into her inspirational cards through QR codes. The resources cover a wide range of topics, including celebration, self-care strategies, and dealing with rejection, something Sutton said she is very familiar with as a full-time entrepreneur. This investment will allow her to expand the Hustle and Hope team and hire an intern, Sutton said. Quote, if I kept track of every no I've ever gotten, I could probably fund my business, Sutton said. But it's just this unwavering belief in myself and holding on to this quote from my mom, no means next, that keeps me going. Lawrence Phillips, another recipient of the Black Entrepreneurs Day, said burnout led him to take a risk and quit his lucrative consulting job to travel the world at the height of his career. While navigating 30 countries across 7 continents, he said he often found himself nervous about visiting certain areas as a Black man. Quote, I really could never find a platform that would tell me from city to city what it would be like traveling while Black, Phillips said to ABC News. By 2018, he launched Green Book Global, a travel platform where users can book trips, read and write reviews, and join a premium membership with discounts and cashback rewards. Phillips said he drew inspiration from the Negro Motorist Green Book, a critical Jim Crow era guide designed to help Black travelers find safe places, accommodations, restaurants, and other services in the United States. Green Book Global was handpicked by Hilton to receive a $25,000 prize with this grant. Philips is all set to overhaul the Green Book Global mobile app and website to make the user experience more seamless. Quote, our goal is to increase the confidence and reduce the anxiety of Black travelers, Phillips said. People don't always have that many vacation days. They have maybe 1 or 2 big trips a year. They don't have the time to have a bad experience. They are probably going to spend a lot of money. So they want to be sure whatever they encounter is a positive experience. He's excited to build out the company's community features so users can directly message each other and grow stronger bonds over their excitement for travel. It's empowering and it adds life to the reviews when you can get to know people behind the post, said Phillips. It's our hope to drive the company forward, and we can't do anything without our community. Now, this is a type of the event that makes sense, okay, compared to the one that's in Atlanta, hosted by Forbes. Grants are being given, conversations are being had about the lack of access to capital. $25,000 doesn't sound like a lot, but it goes a long way, to be quite frank. I mean, $25,000 determines whether or not you can actually book a flight to go to another event to actually raise more capital, or you could be paying rent at some of these places. It's not uncommon that you may be paying $1,500, $2,500 for maybe 5,000 square feet. That's not uncommon for workspace. So this is the type of event that needs to be happening, not like the Forbes Black, event that happened in Atlanta. Like I said, not that I'm knocking them. I'm saying bringing entrepreneurs together to have a conversation about what exactly doesn't make any sense. If you're not starting off talking about the access to the monies, the capital, the things that you need, the resources that you need to actually scale up. $25,000 may not make you scale up, but it's enough to actually put food on the table for right now. And I think that that's some of the challenges that that's the sort of difference. Like, because this is hosted by Damon John, CEO of Fubu, whereas Forbes Black is not Black owned and not Black run. And these are the sort of challenges that you run into, right? So you can see clearly the difference between when it's Black run, how people engage, and when it's not Black run, how people engage. We got Renaissance Man on the panel. What's going on?
Hey, what's up, Mike?
Not much, bro. What's going on?
Nah, nothing much. Yeah, that could be the difference, I guess. Like you said, catching the flight, as they like to say in the manosphere.
Yeah.
But the big thing too is, and I'm going through this right now, is we're sort of evaluating whether we should start this business. Is looking, because the product we're looking at is it's a tech product. So a lot of times when people think about business, they think about necessarily things that are more services. But what you really start to realize is with a lot of businesses is grants are huge because it's non-dilutive funding. Because that's the thing you sort of run into is, hey, do I try to do this as quickly as possible to get my product to market? Which if you do, you're more than likely going to be looking at going the VC route, and they're going to take, a good chunk of your company early on when it has very little valuation. So, you won't, your shares and ownership in the company later on won't be worth as much. So you want to get as many grants and non-dilutive funding opportunities under your belt as possible, even if it's just $25K. Because that's the difference between literally having to sell like a stake in your company, and getting to retain that. And, depending on how well your business goes, that can be invaluable. You're talking about, like I said, it may only be worth, $50,000, but, if it takes off and hits big, that's selling, that 5% stake, and it's worth millions later on is a big difference. So that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. $25,000, $50,000 is a lot of money for someone who does not have it if you're trying to get your business off the ground. And so these sort of things matter in the short term, because most Black people can't even have access to $5,000 from any bank. And so getting 25, 30, 50,000, that's that gives you some wiggle room just for even a couple of months.
Yeah. And the other thing too is, one of the biggest cause behind not having a market, actually, I think it's ahead of not having a market for your product, is being undercapitalized. So we've talked about this before in previous episodes. So that's another angle, is, once again, 25K may not sound like much, but you got to think, I think it's what the average American can't even afford, or it's like 50, or a little bit over 50% of people can't even afford a $400 emergency. So 25K may not sound like much, but it definitely can go a long way.
Yeah, absolutely.
50K, I mean, you can hire someone at that point, at least with that, for a year without, if you, yeah.
All right, let me get to the next item on the docket. This is from newsobserver.com. North Carolina faces pressure to rectify the wrongs of inequitable HBCU funding or risk litigation. North Carolina has been too slow to address years of underfunding of its historically Black colleges and universities, and needs to commit to meaningfully fixing the issue, or can't expect litigation, a group of attorneys are telling state leaders. The attorneys, whose clients are students and alumni of the state's public HBCUs, sent a letter to Governor Roy Cooper last week, calling on him to initiate a review of the process by which the state spends money on HBCUs and other universities, to identify any disparities and commit to calling for necessary additional funding to close the gaps. In 2024, in the October 24th letter, the attorneys wrote to Cooper that the continuation of these disparities is not only morally reprehensible, but also legally untenable, and said that if he didn't respond to their concerns within 10 days, they would pursue legal action as appropriate in federal court. The pressure from the attorneys comes after the Biden administration wrote to Cooper and 15 other governors in September, noting sizable, unacceptable funding inequities at the land-grant HBCUs across the country, and urging them to take action to try to bridge the gap in funding between HBCUs and other universities. In that letter, U.S. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona and the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack wrote to Cooper that the underfunding issue clearly predates all of us, but said it was a problem they hope to collaborate on to avoid burdensome and costly litigation that has occurred in several states. During a press conference Wednesday, Carlos Moore, an attorney with the Cochran firm in Mississippi, said that he and the attorneys would love to avoid taxpayers paying for expensive litigation, but said it was up to Cooper to respond to the concerns they laid out in their letter. Quote, "The writing is on the wall, the evidence is there. It's abundantly clear that the HBCUs in the state have been funded inequitably," Moore said. State Rep Zach Dawkins, a Durham Democrat, said during the press conference that additional funds for the state's HBCUs could go towards improving not just campus infrastructure, but also research and development programs and student support services. Hawkins said it was time for the state to rectify the wrongs of the past and ensure that we have the opportunity to build the diverse workforce which all of our companies are asking for. In their letter to Cooper, Cardona and Vilsack highlighted North Carolina A&T State University. The historically Black land-granted university was founded in 1891, and its disparities in funding as compared to NC State University, the state's first land-grant university. Cardona and Vilsack estimated, using federal data, that North Carolina A&T had been underfunded over the past 30 years by more than $2 billion compared to NC State. Such underfunding disadvantages the students, faculty, and community that the institution serves, and may contribute to a lack of economic activity that would ultimately benefit North Carolina, the letter said. North Carolina A&T, like other HBCUs highlighted in the letters, was founded as part of the Morrill Act of 1890, the federal act to establish land grant institutions for Black and minority students. The first Morrill Act, enacted in 1862, was responsible for the founding of dozens of public universities, including NC State, but those institutions generally discriminated against Black students at their origin. The second Morrill Act required states to provide an equitable distribution of funds between their 1862 and 1890 land grant institutions, but that hasn't happened in North Carolina, nor in 15 of the 17 other states with land grant HBCUs, the letter stated. Quote, North Carolina A&T State University, the 1890 land grant institution in your state, while producing extraordinary graduates that contribute greatly to the state's economy and the fabric of our nation, has not been able to advance in ways that are on par with North Carolina State University at Raleigh. The original Morrill Act of 1862 land grant institution in your state, in large part due to unbalanced funding, Cardona and Vilsack's letter to Cooper stated. The letter suggested North Carolina leaders remedy the disparity either over the course of several years in the state budget or by combining a substantial state allocation to decrease the deficit in funding with forward-looking budget commitment that would provide a 2-to-1 match in dollars between the second and first Morrill Act schools, respectively. It did not recommend cutting funding to other universities to remedy the disparity. No, a few months ago, there was a bit of a discussion in the space about a coach by the name of Deion Sanders, who some content creators said that, well, all HBCUs should just give up their, they should just pay Deion Sanders. They should just give up their money and just pay him. They should pay to keep him there so he can bring in more eyeballs. I find this to be very interesting because they don't have the money to begin with. And now we see why. Okay. Now we see why. So these are sort of these are some of the challenges that Black people have when it comes to funding, not just at the business level, but at the academic level. $2 billion is a lot of money. I don't know if people understand I mean, millions is a lot, but when you talk about $2 billion, you're talking about filling up a room full of money from the floor to the ceiling. And this is missing. And people are pretending as if this is not, that's not that big of a deal. If you don't like it, go to a PWI. How about no? How about not? You want Deion Sanders to be walking around with all this money and all this swag at Jackson State, but don't understand that the universities have been pretty much liquidated of all of their necessary funding from the state itself. Go ahead.
That was one thing that sort of I don't want to go too far rehashing that, but once again, another example of the funding issue. And to be clear, North Carolina has the most HBCUs in the country. In the state. So like it's an issue that it may be a couple of schools that are highlighting it, but it had a massive impact just as far as number of institutions. That's the first thing. And I think we talked about it when we were talking about the whole HBCU funding issue. Anyway, people don't realize, like, when you start talking about like $2 billion, that's really, you got to think that that's lost funding, and you really got to kind of look at the opportunity cost from the standpoint of, how many students would you have gotten had you been able to, take that money that you were getting over time and been able to say, improve the dorms, because that's a common complaint from a lot of people at HBCUs, or have better professors there that could have, gotten more grants to do more research and given, attracted better professors. So it's not just the money in the abstract, it's a compounding effect. It's it's not just I missed out on $2 billion in funding. It's, oh man, I missed that where I could have, made this investment here and could have got some better faculty, could have got some better facilities, could have possibly got, students who went to other academic institutions who are alumni there and now give their money there. So it really compounds when you think about it. The other thing too that I kind of point out with this is, everybody likes to point out what Trump did for HBCUs and this, and that. Once again, Biden gave even more funding to HBCUs, and it's now his administration that's, putting a lot of these states on notice that, hey, you're cheating these people out of funding. So that's one thing as well, because you always hear about, well, Trump gave money to HBCUs, and I'm like, yeah, that bill came from a Democrat. He just signed it, and people kind of thought they saw these HBCU presidents in his office, smiling for a photo op, and they just attributed all that to him when, like I said, the bill started with a Democrat. And, Biden has not done as many photo ops with HBCU presidents. But like I said, this is not the first story we've heard about this. We've heard Tennessee State was another one. I believe there's maybe Alabama A&M in Huntsville. Several HBCUs in different states have had this issue sort of come up of, hey, being on, I think it's Bowie State in Maryland, here in Maryland, they've had that same issue as well. So, several institutions have had this problem, and it's been, this administration that's kind of, put people on notice that, hey, this has to be fixed. Still there, Mike?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I think you're on mute.
Oh yeah, I don't know what happened. Yeah, this is from DP.com. Next item on the docket: Wharton hosts workshop for HBCU students to learn about alternative investing. The Wharton Alt Finance Institute hosted a two-day workshop for historically Black colleges and universities students to learn about the alternative finance and investment industry. The Wharton School collaborates with the Alt Finance Initiative to introduce HBCU students to alternative investing, which involves financial processes outside the traditional system of banks. The campus workshop, which ran from September 29th to the 30th, marks the second year that the programming was held in person. Wharton first partnered with Alt Finance in 2021, offering a virtual institute with coursework on alternative investment. Alt Finance President and CEO Marcus Shaw said the initiative aims to expand access to finance education. Quote, Alt Finance is designed to help increase diversity in the alternative investment ecosystem by partnering Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. According to Shaw, this year's workshop drew over 100 students to campus for a series of workshop finance courses and networking events. Tony Phillips, an alt finance fellow and senior at Clark Atlanta University, said that the experience helped her with both professional and personal development. Quote, it's a very collaborative culture, and I do feel like I found a community and a family within them, she said. On the second day of the workshop, Phillips attended a real estate session, which aligned with her career goals. She added that learning about the investment industry was useful beyond professional interest in finance. This knowledge is literally what runs the world, Phillips said. Even if you don't want to pursue an investment role or even a role in the finance industry, understanding it helps you so much just navigating life. Caleb Brinson, a Jr. at Morehouse College, noted that the program's goal was to change the underrepresentation of Black people in alternative investment roles. He said that Alt Finance's partner firms, Apollo Global Management, Ares Management Corporation, and Oak Tree Capital Management are some of the biggest players in the industry. Quote, the firms are helping us to give us that knowledge that we, while also helping us become professionally developed to a point where there's nothing off limits, Brinson said. Wharton professor of finance, David Musto, who taught a course for the workshop, said that classes on alternative investment were not readily available when he was a college student. Quote, the goal here is to plug into the world of finance, he said. Given the success of this year's programming, Shaw said that he was looking forward to the workshop next fall. Let me ask you this, Renaissance man. Have you taken something like alt finance? I know you have a background in that, right?
No, I actually have not in a course. I've sort of learned about it sort of, on my own, because I'm assuming they're probably talking about things like crowdfunding, private placements, not going to your public markets, angel networks.
Yeah.
I'm assuming all of those things came up, but I've never taken a class. And the other thing I'll say about this is really cool. I'm kind of envious that, this was not around when I was in school.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of these things are popping up that, for minorities to get them underrepresented industries that are available now to undergrads. The thing with this is I guarantee this is tied to, so during or I guess probably maybe after George Floyd, but Wharton named Erica James, who's a Black woman, as the dean of their business school. So I guarantee this initiative came because she used to be the dean of Emory's business school down in Atlanta. So I guarantee, this initiative like this, I guarantee she played a role in it. The manosphere may not want to hear that, but, I guarantee she was involved in, this partnership.
Yep. Indeed.
Yeah. And the other thing is too, with something like that, you're getting people exposure. You're kind of shaping that vision because a lot of when you're that age, thinking in the future, it's not on your radar. You kind of think sort of a couple years, if that, ahead of time. So just being exposed to that space, the opportunity to network, have a tie in some form of fashion, or you never know, just stepping on the campus of Wharton and seeing, I really like the institution. I like the city, kind of can put something in someone's purview that, never was really there. Kind of like, an upper bound type of programs kind of do. If you're into something like that, it never crossed your mind, or you have a great experience there, that can kind of plant the seed of, hey, I want to, go to business school there at some point.
Yeah. It creates an ecosystem more than anything else.
Yeah, agree.
All right, next item on the docket is from TechCrunch.com. Nordskin 22's debut fund closes at $205 million to back growth stage startups in Africa. It's exciting times for growth stage investment in Africa as Nordskin 22, a Pan-African venture capital firm, achieves the final close of its debut fund, raising a total of $205 million, surpassing its initial target. This also highlights a keen interest from institutional investors in supporting African startups at an essential phase of their journey. Nordskin 22, established by 5 individuals with extensive experience in venture capital and private equity, includes founding partners Nicholas Adderberth and Hans Oderlin, along with managing partners Natalie Kolb and general partners Ngitha Wathaka and Lexi Novisky. This venture capital firm, nearly 2 years old, has operational teams in Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, and Ghana. The partners launched the fund named the Nordskin 22 African Tech Growth Fund in January last year after reaching the first close at $110 million. Approximately 59% of the funding came from a consortium of 30 unicorn founders globally, including Flutterwave CEO Agbula, Skype co-founder Nicholas Zenstrom, iZetto co-founder Jacob D. Gier, and Delivery Hero co-founder Nicholas Osberg. Norskin 22 began its fundraising at a time when there was a significant surge in capital flowing into the tech sector. In addition to discussions with several development finance institutions, DFIs, and family offices, a prerequisite for raising a large fund in Africa, the firm aimed to achieve the final close by the end of 2022. However, the global tech investment landscape has experienced a pullback since then, impacting fundraising efforts across the board, including from institutional investors. In 2022, venture capital activity in Africa reached $5 billion to $6 billion. So far in 2023, it has dwindled to a range between $2.5 billion to $3.4 billion, based on data from Big Deal and Bitter Bridges, reflecting a decline in overall venture capital activity. The current slowdown in tech investment caused a year delay for Norskin's 22 to achieve its final close. Nevertheless, this accomplishment is noteworthy, considering the challenges many VC firms, both local and global, are still facing in raising or closing their funds. What's even more impressive is that the growth fund was oversubscribed. Managing partner Colby attributes this success to a renewed fundraising momentum observed at the beginning of 2023. Additionally, the extensive experience of Norskin 22's founding team in African investments, along with the backing of other limited partners, mainly founders of unicorn startups, played a significant role in attracting interest and support for the fund, she remarked. After the initial close of the fund, which saw support from SEB Pension Foundation and a few family offices, Norskin 22 attracted the likes of British International Investment, BII, International Finance Corporation, IFC, U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, DFC, and Standard Bank and Norfund as new limited partners. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but it's important to understand what's happening now. I've been saying this for a long time on this channel that we have to have a Pan-African fund, and that includes Black people in America, in the Caribbean, and on the continent, in order for us to move forward. There's no way out of this unless we all work together. There's just no way around this. I'm happy for this fund, but I wish more Black Americans were involved in this. It doesn't seem like there's any trace of that, but let me finish reading these last two paragraphs and then we'll give a better analysis. In the statement, the firm said it's focused on entrepreneurs developing fintech, edtech, medtech, and market-enabling solutions that will deliver strong returns and have a positive impact across Africa. So far, the Pan-African Growth Stage Fund has made 5 investments, including Challenger Bank, Time Bank, B2B commerce retail platform Sabi, identity verification solution Smile Identity, auto financing platform AutoCheck, and financing app for informal merchant community Shara. Quote, the kind of value we bring is for companies that are looking to grow beyond their borders and building up multi-country Pan-African businesses. Having 3 general partners in the beacon economies of sub-Saharan Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, we were able to provide the companies with people on the ground and networks on the ground. And we also understand the nuances of growth and opportunity in each of our markets, Colby said on Norskin 22's investment strategy. Also, these are startups looking for an investor that can write a big check and can follow on in future rounds and anchor those rounds. That's become very important, particularly now as liquidity becomes a bit tighter on the continent. So this is where we are right now. A Pan-African fund, which is what I've been saying, what we've been saying the last few years, even before the pandemic, something like this was needed. And Africans are on the move when it comes to tech. If anybody thinks that, Save the Children commercials are indicative of what Africa looks like, you are in for a rude awakening. There are a lot of people over there who are highly educated and highly ambitious, and the only thing that's stopping them is access to capital. And now you're starting to see a $205 million growth stage fund get raised. Things are about to change around. So what I'm saying here is Black people need to be on the same page with Africans if they want to move forward. I don't see how you can move forward without Africa being a part of the equation. Renaissance man?
Yeah. I'm overall, no, this is definitely a positive. The one thing I'm always a little cautious on with VC is, making sure this one sounds like it has sort of a social cause behind it. Because I will say the one drawback of VC is that, like I said, you're giving away interest in your company. They might take board seats, for example, or if they have enough of a controlling interest, they can kind of maybe be more focused on getting their money back. Because the way VC essentially works is you kind of bet on 10 companies, 7 or 8 of them are going to fail, and you're just banking on really 2 of them really blowing up to really, 4x, 5x your money, and make money for your fund. But, if you have a fund that has more of a purpose behind it, that makes it a little bit more, in my opinion, collaborative. But the other thing too that's great about VC is people don't know about this, but the money is one thing, but now this may change now that interest rates have gone back up. But at a certain point, when interest rates were low, your VC that you actually went and got on your cap table to invest in your company, you actually would look more at who their partnerships were, like who they could put you, like your relationships, who they had relationships with, sort of more of the resources, like, hey, can they help me with business development, legal, do they have people in there who have connections to those industries? So it's actually more of the capital meant less and more of just sort of the connections that the VC had. Now that may swing back the other way because interest rates have gone up, and that's the other thing is that the timing is really good, because I was talking to one of my colleagues who actually works in VC, Black gentleman works at VC, and he was saying that he thought it was basically going to kind of swing back to more corporate VCs now that interest rates have gone back up, and that these sort of like where everyone was sort of starting a fund or things like that may go down somewhat because some of the returns are not as good as people make them out to be. So the actual timing of closing the fund is actually really, really good as well too. Is it sounds like they've closed just before the interest rate hikes, and people aren't just giving out money as rapidly as they used to.
Yeah. All right, next item on the docket is from businessinsider.com. I got accepted to Amazon's DSP program and launched my own delivery business. I now make $3 million in revenue and own 38 vans. I thought this was classy climber Erica Williams there for a second.
Very true.
I thought it was her.
She's in the trucking, so.
Trucking, vans, something's the same, right?
Yep.
In 2018, I was reading a magazine and I saw an article about Amazon. The company was being ridiculed for not partnering with small businesses to do its deliveries. The article said that for $10,000, anyone could work with Amazon and potentially make $74,000 to $3 million a year. At the time, I was 38 years old, single mom, and sex trafficking survivor living in Austin, Texas area. My grandma really believed in me, and she helped me to build a business acumen. Even though I had a child at the age of 15, I was still able to go to college and get my bachelor's and master's in business administration. At 20 years old, I started my consulting business, Trustworthy Consulting. By the time I graduated, I owned 2 homes and had 2 degrees, and as I read the Amazon article, I was sitting down thinking, wait a minute, why not me? I applied for the partnership and within a year, I was running a $1 million business. After 18 months, my delivery company grew to become a multi-billion-dollar business. I submitted an online application, a resume, and some financial documents. Then Amazon ran a background check. I didn't have a transportation background, but within the application, I talked about initiatives I led and how passionate I was for serving people and families in my community. In 2019, Amazon wanted me to come to Seattle, Washington to interview for the partnership, but I had to pay for the trip myself. I didn't have the money or a babysitter. And with only a week to accept the interview, I turned it down. I didn't believe I could do it. That same year, the day after Christmas, I got an email from Amazon saying, hey, are you still interested in this opportunity? This time, I knew I'd regret it if I didn't let things play out. I went to Las Vegas for the Amazon event, and there were over 200 people in the room. Each candidate had to be interviewed by an Amazon executive. I remember the interviewer asked, are you going to work every day? I said, no, ma'am. I believe in work-life balance. 2 days later, I got a call and they extended me an Amazon partnership. We entered a formal contract for the Austin, Texas area in July 2020. Then I launched my first route for my company on September 22nd, 2020. I now own my own business called L2E Industries, which stands for Learning to Excel Industries. And Amazon is my transportation client. We just cleared over $3 million in less than 3 years. I now have a fleet of 38 blue vans with Prime painted on the side, and my company has grown to almost 80 associates. My delivery team goes to the Amazon delivery stations. They pick up the orders that customers put in and come to your front door or business, delivering the packages, hopefully with a smile. I'm responsible for servicing a portion of Central Texas. We're given 25 to 35 daily routes, and I have to make sure the vans are in place and my staff is dressed and ready to go. On the back end, I lead the operational duties for my company and plan ahead for the various routes my associates need to make, whether the route is rural, urban, or underdeveloped. Our goal is to maximize and leverage safety and quality to generate revenue. We're paid per package that's delivered, and we're rewarded for being safe and for positive remarks that customers leave us. Whenever a person gets a package, they get a message where they can leave a remark on the delivery. Was it on time? Were the delivery drivers courteous? Did they go above and beyond? I encourage people to always answer. Overall, we are incentivized financially through customer satisfaction, the quality of the delivery, and for consistency and reliability. However, I don't directly control the growth of my business. Amazon does. It dictates how much work I receive based on the overall demand and volume of packages. I can't say we're going to average 40 routes a day in 2024, but I can say we'll use a certain percentage from our proceeds to form other conglomerates. Yeah, here's what I have to say about this, man. I see articles like this, and I hear stories like this all the time. And we're in a social space right now where Black men are talking about, Kiki Palmer and, bringing women back to the table. I don't think this woman's coming back to the table. I don't know. I don't think she's coming back to the table anytime soon. Not with $3 million in revenue. I don't think she's coming back to the table. What the fuck are you going to negotiate with someone who brings in $3 million in revenue?
You know what? That's not even the impressive part to me. The fact that she said, I have 80 employees.
Yeah. That's they're probably Black men too.
That's even more impressive to me because, the thing is, and people talk about this, everybody talks a lot about Black business, but a lot of Black businesses are like sole proprietorships.
Yeah.
You know, they have one employee, they're doing services. This is like, I mean, I'm not saying those are not legitimate businesses, but the level of, like, if she wants to move up to, like, she can scale. She can say, hey, I'm doing Amazon. You know, she could stay at the scale she's at, or she can decide, hey, I want to expand areas. I want to get into like long haul trucking. I want to get better experience in the transportation business in general.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like I said, the thing is, you have employees, so that's huge for, hey, I'm making, I know what it's like to have to make payroll, make sure my people get paid, deal with personnel issues, hire people, create a culture, all of those things that you just don't get when you're a sole proprietorship. And that experience is priceless. That's what a lot of people miss in business, is that, having good revenue, obviously that's great, and having
Mm-hmm.
that, that's a bonus, definitely, but the experience is really what's priceless. And when you start looking at, hey, I want to go get a bigger contract with Amazon or with another, large corporation, when you're able to say, hey, this wasn't just, I was, one person or two people doing this. No, I had 80 people I was responsible for, and different routes and different areas. So I can handle something of scale. That's really the valuable thing, because the money will follow that.
Yeah, absolutely. And she can expand to FedEx. She can expand to DHL. There's a lot of ways that she can go about this. I mean, we've talked about this in the past, but Complex and I, but drone deliveries are going to be huge. I'm not talking about like the toy drones you see at like Best Buy or something like that. I'm talking about cargo planes. You can load those suckers up with about 100 pounds worth of packages or whatever have you, and get that thing. The ability to use a drone to deliver packages from point A to point B. I don't think people really understand the significance of this when it comes to logistics, because you're not waiting on a highway or going through traffic or anything like that. If it takes you an hour to travel by car, you imagine a drone is going to take half the time, if not 1/3 of the time. And so when you start talking about logistics and deliveries and things like that, it sounds really basic, but there's a lot of scalability in this, and she's in the right position. And she's right that she's completely dependent upon Amazon, but that doesn't mean she can't branch out to do other things, such as pharmaceutical deliveries and cannabis deliveries and so on and so forth. There's a lot of ways that she can go about this. She owns 38 vans and makes $3 million in revenue. She's not coming back to the table to negotiate with you for shit.
Nope. Or I was gonna say, the other thing is moving. That's the other thing. Like, you get into the moving business. You got 38 vans, you got people, you can get
Yeah.
into that, go negotiate contracts with other small businesses in the area. Or, just being a shipping, hey, I want to ship this piece of furniture that's an antique. I bought it in California. I got to get it back here. So
Yeah.
sort of those miscellaneous items,
Yeah.
miscellaneous large items.
Yeah. Shout outs to her, man. A whole bunch of black men sitting around talking about, you know, uh, Sexy Red and whatever hip hop artists they can find, man. I'm like, I don't know, man. These women out here getting it. I don't know what you talking about. They out here getting it.
Yeah, the other thing is too, you know, like we said, that's not something that's not holding her. Then basically they're operating outside of the BS, the seeing opportunities that are out here. They're taking advantage of them, and guys aren't gonna like it. But she was a single mom and did this. Like, that's no easy task. Like she said, she could have got there sooner, but she couldn't find a babysitter. So you got dudes running around talking about black men and no kids, and I'm like, okay, if we got a single mom out here doing this, like, there should be really no excuse for men if you don't have any kids.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Manosphere Summits in Atlanta, what are they talking about down there? I have no idea, but $3 million in revenue, you know, forget about super
And the funny
chats and
thing,
cash apps. Forget about super chats and cash apps. She's beyond that right now.
and you know what, Mike? I remember when that program came out. Like, I remember talking to, I was in a friend's wedding that year, and I remember we had a group chat, and I remember sharing that with them, that, hey, Amazon's doing that. and they were specifically looking at minorities. And one of them was saying, "Hey, I'm looking at getting into that as well too." So it's crazy to see, roughly about 5 years later, she's been successful, because I remember when that initiative came out.
Yep. Yep. I know a couple of brothers, man, who they do multiple things with their trucks. They do Comcast, Verizon Fios, Direct Dish, Direct TV, and they do Uber and Lyft on the side with another vehicle. These guys are out here getting it. People outside of the black male spaces are out here getting it. And you have people talking about a table to negotiate with. What leverage do you have against a woman who has $3 million in revenue and 80 employees, man, and 38 vehicles? I just don't understand that logic, man. I don't understand that way of thinking.
The other thing too, I'll say is, we were just talking about, sort of the programs that, like the initiative at Wharton for alternative finance. These guys are going to sound crazier and crazier as time goes on. Like, because you got to think those kids are probably juniors in college, seniors in college. So, they're getting ready to graduate and come to the professional world. So, you really haven't even seen the true fruits be born out of all these initiatives that are coming out of these universities that, or some of these even HBCUs where, they get the funding straight and they can actually, run the institution with, on par with others. You're really not you'll see the immediate effects of that, like in new courses, building maybe some upgraded faculty, but you really won't see the effects of that until, 10 years, 20 years from now, when people who benefited from those programs are in a position to leverage that knowledge and really capitalize. And that's where, the guys sound crazy now, but you're going to look even crazier as time goes on. And, these people who are getting these opportunities and this knowledge are actually able to put it into practice and really scale it up.
Yeah. Yeah. On the spot live in the chat, I have a question. She said, what do you guys think of the cap or Amazon's ability to dictate how much work her company can take on? How do you think they would make those decisions? Well, I think it's based on performance. If the performance is 100% or even 99%, we usually go 95% in where I'm at in the finance industry. 95% is good. And that's pretty much what we cap it at.
Yeah, I would say that, probably what they're trying to work on is quality control.
Yep.
So once again, we are in America, so I wouldn't be surprised if some bias, sneaks its way in. But, if she has a well-performing company, they're going to want to expand it, because the thing is, if you're Amazon, the whole thing you really sell yourself on is, same day delivery, second, used to be Prime was 2 days. Now it's a lot of stuff is same day. So as people, do more and more shopping at home, and you have more and more generations coming, with disposable income, who are used to and are accustomed to, hey, if I want something, I jump on Amazon and it's at my door, versus, going out and buying it. The demand and, is only going to be even greater for services like that. And if you are doing good performance, they're only going to want to give you more resources, because it's going to make them look good on the back end.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, no. So that was basically the bottom line. Because you guys kind of covered that. I kind of came on and want to speak on that. It's a function of performance. If this woman's company really performs very well and she continues to scale, she's going to get more and more business. The ones who are certainly maybe not scaling as well are going to get less, and that's just kind of how business works. So she'll do very well and will expand. And if she starts to hit the top of the list, she's going to get a lot bigger. There are other areas to branch out into also, such as medical transports and so forth, that are in the healthcare industry that it's expanding massively, and that's only going to get bigger. So that type of business can expand vertically in quite a few different arenas. So she's doing extremely well. I think it's pretty funny when you talk about people coming back to the table. You gotta consider the source of the guys who are talking about coming back to the table and so forth. They're not in business. They're not involved in anything really serious. So it's just these guys are just on YouTube kind of talking. But those who are very serious, who are really out here making it happen, those kind of questions are kind of ridiculous. But as far as what this woman's doing and what other brothers should be getting into, this is what we need to be looking at. And very, very important to bring this up because a lot of us are not thinking about this. I also looked at what you were talking about, the startup tech incubator, that certainly in the city, we've heard about that. Huge going in, huge. There's a lot going in that we here in the manosphere have to seriously.
I haven't read it yet.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, okay.
No,
All right.
no.
I'm sorry. I thought you did. I came in a little bit late. But yeah. And anyway, okay. We'll wait for you to get there. All right. I'm done. Thanks.
All right. Next item on the docket is from cityandstatenewyork.com. Tech startup incubator heralded as a sign of things to come. New York City Mayor Eric Adams called the new Civic Hall in Manhattan's Union Square a laboratory for the entire country. This is going to be interesting. A sprawling electronics store in Union Square has been replaced by a tech startup incubator and training campus, a $30 million project hailed by the city officials as a sign of things to come for the booming sector. On Wednesday, Mayor Eric Adams and his top economic development officers joined nonprofit collaborator, the FedCap Group, to cut the ribbon on the new center dubbed Civic Hall, which its architects believe will serve as a model for other sectors and cities to follow. When it reaches full capacity, the hub will serve 3,000 to 4,000 students a year with free or subsidized training programs aimed at getting New Yorkers of diverse backgrounds into the fast-growing industry. Quote, if you have companies and problem solvers and the people look the same, talk the same, walk the same, eat the same food, and listen to the same music and view the same things, you are not being a leader of today and of tomorrow. Adams said to a room full of industry insiders and local leaders gathered in one of the building's new conference spaces, calling it a laboratory for the entire country. These civic halls are going to be popping up all over the globe, he said. The project was a pillar of a 2017 jobs plan launched by the then mayor, Bill de Blasio, called New York Works, that was aimed at creating 100,000 new jobs over 10 years, a third of which would be in tech. Those plans were severely disrupted by the pandemic, which devastated the job market, paused construction, and choked the supply chain. At the ribbon cutting Wednesday, the city's Economic Development Corporation, which helped spearhead the 2017 blueprint, couldn't say the status of the overall plan or whether it was still being pursued. Quote, what I can tell you is that New York City has more jobs today than on any day in its history. Economic Development Corporation President and CEO Andrew Kimball told City and State, we have not only gained back all the jobs lost during the COVID-19 pandemic, but we're exceeding that and we're just getting started. We know there's a lot more work to do to build that equitable and inclusive economy that we all want. One of the great things about EDC is we work through multiple administrations on very long-term projects. A spokesperson clarified by email, while some goals are still in place, de Blasio's plan was supplanted by the new administration's New York agenda. New New York agenda and its economic recovery blueprint. From 2017 to 2022, the city added over 46,000 tech jobs, the spokesperson said. New York's tech sector is both one of the fastest growing and most exclusive industries, suffering from lack of diversity in the relatively high wage trade. Pre-pandemic, fewer than 30% of the tech jobs in New York City were held by women, and fewer than 10% of the tech employees were Black, according to a report from the state comptroller. The new hub will provide state-of-the-art classroom space at below market rates for companies offering workforce development programs in tech. For and nonprofit organizations, including LaGuardia Community College, will serve as an anchor tenants at the site, operated by nonprofit Civic Hall, a subsidiary of the FedCap Group. The building will also lease space to other tech companies that officials will say will serve as a landing point for participants in the program pipeline. Quote, there are also there are all these companies here in the tech space that we're building relationship with. So everybody getting trained here gets a job afterwards, said FedCap's Chief Strategy Officer and Senior Vice President of Education, Jim Malatras, the former SUNY Chancellor and Director of State Operations under former Governor Andrew Cuomo. The project was funded with $14.5 million from Civic Hall and its partners and $15.5 million in city funds, according to Seema Shah, Civic Hall's executive director. The building housing the center, a new 21-story tower on East 14th Street called Zero Irving, was built on city land with the backing of local council member Carlina Rivera. Civic Hall founder Andrew Raji proposed the effort to the city and spearheaded a unanimous ULURP approval process. The launch comes less than 2 weeks after Adams celebrated the return of nearly 1 million private sector jobs lost during the pandemic and total jobs number reaching 4.7 million. The administration has attributed the recovery in part to major economic development projects like a planned life sciences hub in Manhattan and plans to redevelop Broadway Junction in Brooklyn and Staten Island's North Shore. You know, I don't want to give too much credit to Eric Adams, but, you know, you have to admit that this is a really genius idea and great way to spend, city funds on something like this. I mean, the return on investment is, is pretty easy to see.
Yeah, I was gonna say that that's the thing that when guys start talking about they're a conservative, they're a Republican, small government. Mm-hmm. I'm like, this is one of the big things that they miss, in my opinion, is the economic development piece. Because what it sounds like they're trying to do is basically almost like, and a lot of cities around the country are seeing this now, because you started to see incubators pop up at universities, cities, and really they're trying to take that same Silicon Valley model and bring it to their city, where you have the incubator space, you have the co-working space. You try to wrap in your universities as well as your businesses to try to create almost like this conglomerate of, hey, I've got people who are ambitious, who are creative, who have talent, and all the resources they need to basically utilize and expand that. All that's right there. And then that will benefit the city economically. I mean, Tech Square down in Atlanta is another example of this as well, tying in Morehouse, tying in Georgia Tech, and really trying to, drive the next wave of innovation and entrepreneurship. Because I mean, if you look around the country, those are the places that are essentially doing well. These places where you're attracting young people, they're ambitious, they have talent, they're creative. Those places are thriving, and a lot of these places that are conservative, low taxes, kind of lacking in economic development. A lot of those places are dying, and the ones that are actually embracing some of this, you're starting to see some change in the positive direction. So when I hear people talk like that, I'm just like, they really miss the economic development piece.
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at many of the very conservatives. They're actually not even looking at that, or certainly not looking at that for you, or as we say, for Black folks. They're not even trying to integrate you into that. It's just something that they don't foresee for you, or really plan for you. So that's just an issue. Reason why I bring this up is because when I was tutoring at the school, at the Harlem School Zone, this was something that was being talked about back then, about 3 years ago, and that was a significant part of what this program was about, with Soho Tech and all of that. That was bringing in many of the of what they considered some of the minority students, especially Black ones, and they were linking into that through the school zone, where this was a very big part, and they were actually starting to how would I say, incubate some tech startups, looking at incubate some tech startups then. So this is integrating directly in to this type of program, and a lot of this has come out of Canada, and Jeffrey Canada and them, who were talking about getting this type of thing going on, and this has been in the plan on the works for some years. So I had some idea about this, and this is going on now, which is huge, and that's why I was getting ready to kind of mention this a minute ago when Mike was going over this. This is something that's been in the plan for a while. So I would have to say that, as far as the city is concerned, they definitely are on top of this. And New York City certainly is a leader, without question, in the economic market here, or a large economic hub, let's say on the East Coast, and certainly from a tech standpoint, we are definitely well situated to do very well and take a lot of advantage about this, and take a lot of advantage here. And we, as Black people, Black men, we here as well, need to be much more integrated into this. We already have some of our people getting integrated into this through the Harlem School Zone and some other avenues that are in the tech sector, certainly in some of the junior colleges, and moving more towards the universities where they're going to have students coming in. But this is something that we see that's certainly going to grow. So we have a lot of people talking other kind of stuff, but what we have to look at is where we can really expand into this, when I say the next century, okay, the next century is a way off, but we have to start really getting deeply involved in this tech sector here now, to where we can really get in at the ground floor, build businesses, and expand. We are doing that in the city. I know something like, Mike, do we have are we looking at something like this going on in Massachusetts as well, in Boston? I don't know if because you guys definitely have a great hub for something like that as well. I'd be interested to hear about that. But this is where we have to be putting our efforts, and it's very good that the Brain Trust is bringing this kind of information out, because a lot of us are not aware of this. I'm definitely aware of this, but this is something that we have to be aware of, and certainly really push our youth to really get much more involved here from a learning perspective and getting into these industries, because this is where the game is going to be, and this is the game of the future, and we've got to be there. So go ahead, Mike. I was just asking about Boston, so I don't know if you have any anything else to add.
Yeah, that's what the Innovation District was developed for.
Okay.
Yeah, the Innovation District was developed to compete with Silicon Valley. Massachusetts is the #1 state in the country for life sciences. We discussed this last month about ARPA-H, which is basically the NASA of healthcare research that was just awarded about a month and a half ago by the federal government, because of how robust the state is when it comes to life sciences and tech. We're probably the #1 state for cybersecurity. A lot of cybersecurity startups are here. And we also have the space program, not to be confused with out of orbit, but the grant funding platform that Mayor Wu put out this year, or I think last year, that funds Black startups and brick and mortar businesses. And so if you want to open up a business in one of the vacant spots in downtown, which is a major multi-billion-dollar hub, they will pay for they will give you $200,000 up front to start. And these are the sort of things that, these are sort of innovation solutions that the left comes up with. I hate to say that, but that's really where it comes from. It really comes from the left. It doesn't really come from the right. You don't really see a whole lot of talk about these sort of big ideas, Big Ten ideas coming from any other group other than the left in you know, I know Eric Adams is taking credit for it, but he's, you know, kind of a spearhead for something like this.
Yeah,
No, like you said in the article, De Blasio started, who was one of the, ran at least on one of the more progressive platforms that New York has had in a long time.
Yeah, like I said, we were talking about that back. This was back 2019. We're talking about this. This was back in 2019, 2018, 2019. You know, when we were tutoring. I mean, you know, this was something that was talked about for a while. Eric Adams is smart from the standpoint of understanding the value in this, and of course he's going to move forward there. But this was not a new idea coming in. Actually, this has been on the burner for a while, and so now we've got corporations and the university systems, and they're kicking into this. So this is certainly something that I believe is going to work well. And yes, it is geared for us. It is geared for us to actually get vertically integrated into this. Not that they're going to hook this up and all the Indians are going to take it over or something else like that people might be thinking, but we are actually on the ground floor here. So you know, this is something that is going on. It's going to get even bigger. And you know, I think it's going to be totally awesome, but we need to see more of this around other cities, certainly in the country. Whether the far right wing guys or whatever in their cities are going to be doing this, I don't. Unfortunately, I really don't see that. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, let me get to the next. Go ahead, Renaissance.
No, I'll quickly add to Mike just to tie this in. This kind of goes back to the HBCU thing as well too, because like I said, the tying in institutions. I know you talked about up in Boston. You know, you've got two Harvard and MIT right down the street from each other. You know, that drives a ton of talent out into this ecosystem, as well as a lot of faculty resources that can help, you know, guide this sort of stuff. So I just wanted to tie that quickly back to the underfunding in HBCUs in the sense of, you know, when you look at something like a Raleigh-Durham, where like North Carolina Central is in that area, and things like that, you know, when you don't have the funding, or you know, Nashville, where Tennessee State is, you know, that's one thing that this is a hindrance to as well. So, you know, getting that turned around is huge for them to be able to plug in and play and add their resources to an ecosystem like that as well.
All right, next item on the docket is from Forbes. Wellington Access Ventures raises $150 million to back underrepresented founders. This should be interesting. When Maroxa founder, Devarius Brown, was looking to raise more venture capital funding for his data infrastructure startup for developers, he quickly focused on one newer under the radar fund, Wellington Access Ventures. Maroxa had already raised $19 million from established firms, but for Brown, who was known Wellington Access Ventures partners from overlap at Salesforce, industry nonprofit Black VC. I don't know why this screen looks like this. Sorry. And through his previous led investors, it was an easy choice. It was a foregone conclusion that I was going to talk to them, said Brown. We're both at a stage that we can rise together. Known as WAV or WAVE, pronounced WAVE, Wellington Access Ventures is looking to establish itself as such a go-to investor for early-stage founders from underrepresented backgrounds. A new dedicated fund and brand within $1.1 trillion in assets, Wellington's $8 billion private investment platform. Wave has raised $150 million for its debut, with the backing of limited partners, including state pension plans and banks. Quote, we feel really strongly that the talent is universal, but opportunities and capital have not been equally accessible across the VC ecosystem, said the fund's leader, Jackson Cummins. So what we're looking to do here is invest in who we think will be the next industry-defining companies and leaders. A Forbes under 30 list alumni Cummings is joined by three deal leads: Frederick Gross, Van Jones, and Sasha McKenzie. The four partners who are based across the country: Cummings in New York, Grossi in Seattle, and Jones in Los Angeles, and McKenzie in Cincinnati. Will invest in early stage rounds from seed to Series A stages, focusing on startups led by founders whose race, gender, and ethnicity or background don't fit the typical tech ecosystem tropes. While Wave doesn't have specific requirements to that effect, we tend to look to back those founders who have been overlooked and have that chip on their shoulder, Cummings said. While the number of Black VC firms has increased in recent years, including Base 10 Partners, Harlem Capital, and Caper Capital, among others, many of the bigger such funds don't invest with a mandate to back underrepresented founders specifically. Among those that do, emerging managers have reckoned with a pullback among corporate backers that has disproportionately affected Black and underrepresented VCs, including when Elon Musk's Twitter stopped wiring committed capital to a number of such funds earlier this year. The numbers aren't better for startups. Black founders raised just 0.13% of U.S. funding in the third quarter of 2023, and women-founded startups raised only 1.9% of venture dollars last year. At $150 million for its first fund, Wave Partners believe it can help bridge the gap by leading or co-leading funding rounds immediately following such specialist funds, which often invest in smaller initial check. Then they hope the fund's affiliation with Wellington's other later stage private investment funds and public market analysts can help guide such companies through their journey to IPO. So I'm all for this. I think that this is a great idea. We need more Black VC firms who are actually committed to Black tech startups, or Black startups for that matter, not just tech. And so here's the dilemma that I see here. They mentioned Harlem Capital, Caper, and a couple of other ones. Why don't all these why don't all these Black VC firms just come together and create one massive super fund? How about that? All this fragmentation isn't really helping because they're picking and choosing the winners and the losers. And I think that is going to actually cause issues down the line as to who gets funded and who doesn't get funded. Because how can you compete? I mean, not that $150 million is anything to sneeze at, but how can you compete if you're only making up less than 1% of the market in funding?
Well,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I hear your point. The one thing I think I actually do like that multiple firms are spread out have popped up, just because, like, you know, I think what you're sort of speaking to, sort of competition, is that the funds have to be bigger. And you know, one way to think about it is to, hey, combine, but then you sort of have fewer sources coupled with, you know, larger funds. You know, your general partner is going to play a large role in determining, because, you know, these guys are leads. Their job is to basically, hey, go and source deals, be out there shaking hands, trying to let people know, hey, this is who we are, this is what we do. But they won't necessarily be the people who are making the decision. They'll have a say, but they won't have the final say in the investment. That a lot of that is going to come from your partner who's actually managing the fund. That's usually like a former hedge fund or Wall Street guy. So you still have to sort of get through that bias. So I hear what you're saying, but I like the idea more of, hey, if the funds aren't big enough, we need to find a way to make them bigger, but still have multiple avenues, just so you don't get caught up in one person's bias or, another person's bias. The other thing I'll quickly add too is they made a reference down in the article to Black VC. So that's actually an organization. I believe it's in partnership with like Berkeley Law and a few other companies that are basically focusing. They have two programs. They have called Breaking into VC, and they have Black Venture Institute. which is basically an online collaborative sort of program. I think it's about a few months long, where you can basically, if you're interested in breaking into the VC industry, you can apply. Their application is actually open right now, as well as I think Black Venture Institute will open up in the next like month or so. So if you're listening to this stream and you're actually interested and want to like learn more, I would definitely recommend. You know, you can go on LinkedIn, you can search them on Google, and you can see the different programs that they offer. I'm actually thinking of trying to do the Breaking into VC course this spring if I can get applying to it. You have to apply and get accepted into it.
Bone, do you have anything you want to add to this?
Oh no, I would just, I think Renaissance broke in there pretty well, but I would say, I would like to see, strong VC firms, Black VC firms, kind of link up and kind of vote front up a bit, because I think that would be a bigger, it would have a stronger, even that much more of a stronger impact. Consolidation a lot of times really plays a big role in business. So I would think that could be potentially more advantageous. But some of the factors that he's talking about definitely have to come into play. So it's just, maybe it's not as easy as it might seem. It may not be as easy as it might seem, but I definitely believe, certainly in consolidating things up a bit more, so you have a a bigger presence. I mean, I'm more in favor of that, but I do understand some of the other factors that are involved. But nah, that's it.
All right, last item on the docket. This is from TechCrunch. Black founders received 0.13% of capital this Q3. Black founders raised 0.13% of all capital allocated to U.S. startups in Q3, according to Crunchbase. That's about $39.7 million out of the $29.9 billion. This number is a massive year-over-year drop. In Q3 2022, Black founders raised $1 billion out of around $81.7 billion in venture capital and venture dollars, around 1.2%. Actually, $39.7 million is a massive quarter-over-quarter drop. Just in Q2, Black founders raised $212 million out of the $29 billion. And in Q1, they raised $352 million out of the $45 billion. There seems to have been an overall dip in venture capital funding this Q3. But as we've covered, funding to Black founders has been consistently declining since 2020. Unfortunately, the venture industry is moving in the wrong direction here. Gene Tierney, the senior data editor at Crunchbase, told TechCrunch, it may be tempting to blame a larger market correction, but the data tells a different story. She pointed out that it's not just the dollars to Black founders that are down, but also the overall percentage of funding remains low, dropping to some of its lowest levels. Despite the valiant efforts of many firms and organizations, it's clear that more work needs to be done to overcome biases in the ecosystem, she continued. I mean, this is just a chart of what it looked like for funding to Black founders. We've been talking about this since 2017 when we started the Black Brain Trust, that there's something going on when it comes to having access to capital. And we've been banging this since 2017. And I'm surprised to see that the data goes all the way back to 2017. And so we're not just pulling this out of thin air. There's actually data to reflect a lot of our concerns. To many Black founders, the dip in funding was expected. A lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion promises made after 2020 were broken, and conservative activists have started attacking grant programs that seek to help marginalized communities. Given that context, Thierry said she wondered if there is now an abundance of caution in the ecosystem that is preventing investors from taking chances on first-time founders who are more likely to be diverse. Quote, we'll be watching to see if the new California law sparks any changes. but it will be quite some time before it's implemented and even longer before we get any answers, she said. On the ground, Black founders are also feeling the dip. Yves Perez, the co-founder of Workbnb, called 2023 the year of smoke and mirrors for Black founders raising. He cited the broken commitments along with other stories he heard of how difficult it was for him and his peers. Quote, I watched several Black founders suddenly adopt AI to help them raise or drop their valuation significantly so they could get fundraising over with, he said. Arian Long, the founder of the period care company, Femly, said, although access to capital was often impossible this year, she and her company circumvented that by doubling down on profitability, staying lean, leveraging grants, and pitching competitions. Black founders have also spoken more and more simply leaning into the other networks rather than seeking capital from the old guard players who have become more obvious in not supporting them. There are more emerging funds and a split in the ecosystem where, although numbers are dismal, there are indeed people passionate about backing diverse talent. Perez and Tinia Pina, the founder of ag tech company Renewable, said she was able to find support in their respective networks. I am more connected and in touch with investors that are mission and impact aligned, Pina said. It's a very conscious community of investors that try to be aware of and eliminate biases such as this. Conscious community. Where have I heard that before in this space? So here's this article, right? Because we do read articles around here because we need a source to back up our claims. You know, Black people are not getting access to the capital that they need to grow their startups. And what I hear frustrates me when I hear people say, well, why, why don't, we have 17-point agendas, right? We have all, we talk to people behind the scenes. I'm sorry, but there's a lot more going on than what meets the eye. And the data tells me that, as the article states, conservative activists out there stymieing the progress of Black people. Okay? Conservative activists are doing this, making it hard for venture capitalists and angel investors to dole out funds to Black startups that are desperately needed, and we have people trying to argue that this is not true. Okay?
Yeah, nobody speaks about it. Nobody reports on this either. Nobody else reports on it except here. That's where I hear it.
You know what's interesting about this graph too, Mike?
Yeah.
If you look at Q3 2020, and then you look at what happens at Q1 21, Q1 23 through Q1 23, and then you see go all the way to sort of Q22 again, you sort of see what I think is sort of that George Floyd, everybody's all of a sudden focused on, DEI and equity. And you sort of see that spike for a minute. And then it's kind of, it returns to where it basically was.
Yeah.
So, I think that's what you're definitely seeing in that data is people being like, oh man, this is kind of bad, but it's sort of like, hey, temporary shock to the system. And then, kind of back to things as usual, because the thinking from a lot of people in this space is, especially like with the low interest rates, oh, well, if you have a good idea, you'll get funded.
Yeah.
And that's just, it's not quite the case. Because you have instances where, I've heard of instances where the guy who actually got the money, this is a white guy in this instance, another Black guy was actually in the room and knew the VC that was giving the money. And, the partner who approved the investment he really didn't think the guy was going to be successful. He just admitted, hey, he liked the guy. You know, it's those types of biases that people really don't want to talk about, that kind of that work their way into these decisions of, you know, whether this person gets money, you know, regardless of the validity of their idea. And then you really go back to, you know, this, what we've been through with low interest rates over the past decade, coupled with what you saw in the early 2000s and throughout the 90s. You know, you had people running in there with basically a pitch deck, no business plan, you know, and hey, I got a website, and walk out with a $2 million check. I mean, you know, so when you see those numbers over the past decade, that should really put that thesis to death of, hey, you know, well, if you just have a good idea, you know, you'll get funded, because they were handing out money left and right the past decade or so, and you still ended up with numbers like this.
And how do you explain 30% of the population, 30% of that angel funding 30%, the angel funding population there, 30% getting 90% of the money, over 90%, 30% white males, 90% of the money, everyone else fighting over just about 10%. We're at 1%. That 1% and shrinking in some respects. How do you explain that? So this has been going on for a while. And if we're saying, well, the guy just doesn't like this other guy, or he likes the other guy more, that's been going on a very, very, very long time. And those trends are still in place. And I see very few of us talking about that, but we certainly talk about that here. So, you know, we you know, let's keep highlighting that, and speaking openly about that, because that is a problem. That is a huge problem, and that definitely hurts us with respect to building businesses and getting into this industry in a bigger way, and with larger participation, and just not building wealth and so forth, but really getting into the building of this industry, because we're adding a lot to it regardless. We have many Black people who are in the tech industry, bringing in innovations, and other people are basically taking full advantage of that, and we're not, you know, getting the advantage of that as much as we should.
You know, I've talked about this about a week or so ago, maybe even a month or so ago, that when it comes to a more innovative approach, we know that cannabis is not federally recognized, at least at the conception of the social equity initiative for cannabis dispensaries. When it comes to the taxation of it, what we would need is a way to drive those tax dollars that can't be put into a bank, because banks don't want to touch that type of money, put it into a Black fund, a Black VC fund, and allow that fund to disperse to all the necessary startups at the angel investment layer of their journey. And so what that does is it keeps a continuous stream of revenue coming in, because you can't put it into a bank, but the money has to be spent, and it has to be spent on something. And you're not going to be able to, I don't care who you are and what city you're in, if you have a large enough Black constituency and you have a social equity initiative, and that money starts going somewhere else other than, you know, to Black people, especially if you have a dispensary that's white and opens up in a predominantly Black neighborhood, you are finished. You will not be able to run for election again, and you'd be lucky if you can stay alive after making a decision like that at the elected official level. That, you know, you're going to disperse the money somewhere else other than in the Black neighborhood, or you're going to have a dispensary open up in a predominantly Black neighborhood that's run by non-Black people. It just would never sit well with Black people. You'd be lucky you don't get your house shot up for that. And so what I'm saying here is the tax dollars that come from these dispensaries could easily go into a Black VC fund. and that money would be easily dispersed because you would have to actually keep spending it because you can't really hold on to it for too long. I don't even know if you can how long you can hold on to it for from a federal regulatory standpoint, but that money would have to be pushed almost immediately. That's where the funding for Black startups would actually come from. And so we've covered the numbers before. California, $1 billion in revenue. State of Washington, $1 billion in revenue. State of Colorado, $1 billion in revenue. We know that there's money there. It's just a matter of how do you channel those dollars into investment funds. And I think that there is a way to actually do this.
And we need to be talking about that a lot more, because that's the only way you're going to get properly funded and backed, because we see that when it comes to these angel funding firms, and we see the VC monies, it is definitely not going to be dispersed to you with any degree of equity. It's just not going to happen. Too much is in there to stop you from getting that. That's the key. When we talk about racism and all this stuff that we talk about, the key thing here is to sequester you from wealth, from a certain amount of money and access to dollars to move forward. That's why it's tough for you to have the banking system to open up for you. Very difficult for you to get finance with respect to, real properties and so forth. And certainly starting up business startups, they don't want you to have those dollars, because that's going to empower you a lot more. And that's the bottom line to this. That's where this institutional piece really comes in, is to sequester you from obtaining or being able to acquire wealth, and vertically integrating you into this tech industry, of which is the future. That's where we can really do extremely well. They definitely don't want you there. Maybe as a worker bee, but as far as owners and so forth, no.
No, I don't disagree with you about them trying to sequester if you start talking about attacks on affirmative action. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying,
no, as far as
if you're an organization that has ESG goals, right, environmental, social, and governance goals and agenda, and metrics that you're trying to meet, this is one of the fastest ways that it can be done. If you're a city, I would agree. If you're a city or a state, this makes a heck of a lot of sense, because if you weren't going to spend that money before, you now have a consistent stream of revenue coming in from the tax dollars of these cannabis dispensaries that could easily go into a fund. But that involves a public banking system. You need a public bank to do something like that. And unfortunately, you have a lot of people who don't really understand public banking and don't understand the significance of this. You see that folks in North Dakota, which has the oldest public bank in the country.
Over 100 years old, almost 120 years old.
Yeah. It has it has never failed. Even during the 2008 crisis, it did not fail. It kept a lot of those folks going out there. And so the point that I'm making here is we need a ecosystem that actually drives all this. I'm not knocking any of the previous articles that we've read with, some of the Black VCs, but what I am saying is that's the traditional way of doing things pre-pandemic. Post-pandemic, you got to come up with something more innovative, or you're going to keep seeing this 0.13% of funding going to Black startups in the country become even worse. Black startups receive less funding than women startups.
Yes, that's fact.
So you're talking about black men and Black women are less funded than women-led startups, which are probably predominantly white. So it's not just an issue of gender, but it's an issue of racial stratification. That there is an agenda to make sure that, like you said, that you're sequestered. So this requires a little bit of research, man. And I don't know if anybody has the political will to actually step up and say, let's actually do something about the funding. yeah, let's actually do something about the funding here, because it needs a whole entire ecosystem. It's nice that you have 2, 3, 4, 5 different venture capitalist firms, but you also need another vehicle that is going to be more consistent to addressing the needs of those people that are continuously underfunded. I know we have like Houston, Atlanta, LA, Baltimore, four of the largest cities for Black people, demographically speaking, run by Black mayors. And yet, no one seems to have come up with a really reliable solution to all of this. Instead of waiting for, private equity to come in, I don't know if that's necessarily going to be able to hold up in court because people are attacking these firms, like these, conservative activists, like the article mentioned. Let me just go over this piece really quickly. I'm not going to read this whole thing. Black founders still care for Silicon Valley Bank. 8 months after the bank's crash, many have no hard feelings. This is from TechCrunch. Silicon Valley Bank was in Austin this week, sponsoring and hosting parties at Afrotech, the largest Black tech conference in the nation. It's been 8 months since Silicon Valley Bank's dramatic collapse, where hundreds, if not thousands, of founders fled to competing banks. At one of their parties, reggae and Afro beats played loud, and the drinks were flowing. It was as if nothing had ever happened, did it? I did a vibe check to see. For a few Black techies, the bank's presence in Austin left an awkward taste. A founder at the conference who asked to remain anonymous told me it felt in poor taste for the bank to throw a celebration at a Black tech conference like this. The quote, that terrible fallout impacted so many Black founders who banked with them and had the rug pulled out from under their feet, she said. Reputation has always preceded it. Luke Bailey, the founder of Neon Money Club, has never banked with SVB because of the bank's concentrated risk. Still, he told me he's always respected the organization and found its presence at the conference to be endearing. Quote, while its leaders had some missteps that led to the downfall, that bank had arguably the best startup banking team in the nation and practically invented the category, he told me. He admits that many Black founders he knew who moved from the bank never went back, but he thinks many people have moved on from that situation. Quote, I think it's dope that the SVB team still seems committed to our community, and it screams mission-driven beyond circumstances, he said. They sort of had to earn trust again from scratch. At a press roundtable, Simone White, the senior vice president of Afrotech, told us that the bank had been a partner with the conference for nearly 5 years and that it had came back this year larger than ever. They are here, she said, emphasizing their presence. White said this showed the bank's commitment to supporting Black founders despite its challenging past few months. When asked about returning to Afrotech this year, Tosh Ernest, head of SVB's Catalyst 2045, said simply, we are at Afrotech again because innovators are here. It's true, the bank has been working hard to rebuild trust, and granted, any other year, its presence at Afrotech wouldn't have raised as many eyebrows. Wait, they are here. I thought they were bankrupt. A founder at the VC happy hour asked me, the bank was always known for hosting parties and lending support to diverse founders. Since its crash, it has sought to rebuild its reputation as a key social player, and as the executive at the bank told us at Disrupt that it has also been working to remind founders that it's okay to come back, that the water's fine. SVB now operates as a division of First Citizens Bank. Well, this is very interesting. First Citizens Bank. Let me just pull this up really quickly. Okay, this is going to be interesting. Let me finish this up really quickly. I mean, sure, even though even the Afrotech Party, sorry, even the Afrotech Party and Open Bar are nice, but trust is hard. Is a hard thing to earn, lose, and then request again, especially for a community that already has a fraught history with financial institutions. Many Black founders I spoke to left the bank and have not looked back. They say it's too risky given the uncertain financial climate, and working with a more established bank like JP Morgan Chase is just a safer place to park money if the going gets tough. Those who stayed end up diversifying their financial partners, leaning toward a less risk-averse bank. Dealing with startups is fairly risk-free after all. Still, a lot of Black founders are rooting for SVP. The bank was there for them, giving loans and accounts when no other financial institution would. It gave them community events in this gate-kept world of venture capital. And if they couldn't stay, a part of them wanted to. So if grabbing a gin and a tonic at that party meant still showing support for the institution, then, well, they would raise a glass. I feel like everyone has moved on, a techie at the party told me. I don't want to spend too much time reading this, but this is very interesting because, a failed bank shows up to your community-driven event and acts like nothing ever happened. But what I want to actually bring up is First Citizens Bank. Second here. Let me share my screen and why this is very important.
Oh, it looks like Mike. Looked like he dropped out. We'll give him a second. I'm sure he'll be back.
Is Mike there? He's gone?
Yeah, I think his connection dropped out. So we'll give him a second. Any thoughts though on the stream overall, Nagon?
I think the stream is right on the money. This is something that we've been talking about on the Brain Trust for a while, and the economics, and let's really break it down. Really getting that angel, that funding to really start and build businesses, is is huge. You have other ethnicities getting millions of dollars startup funds easily, moving into business very quickly and getting advantages. And here we have tremendously talented people in this tech industry now, very talented people who've got good knowledge, excellent experience, innovation, and we're having a difficult time getting these businesses funded.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I'll add too. I think that the one thing I always like to highlight with people, this is one prong of the approach. Because a lot of things to that you'll hear a lot of people on the right too is, they'll talk about almost a black capitalist type of politic, which there's an element of that in this. From my standpoint, this is a piece to the overall health of Black America. There still has to be progressive policy. You still have to do something about reparations, in my opinion. You still have to do something about the redress for redlining, all discrimination. So that's the one thing I always try to caveat in all this is great information. It's a great tool, but there's got to be more in the way of policy. And I think that's another place where some of us sort of deviate, who gravitate to the right, is they sort of see business and startups as the end all be all. And I'm like, nah, this is part of it, but this won't do it all by itself.
Agreed. Totally agree. This won't be just everything, but we definitely need to start. We definitely have to, first of all, start to get on on a somewhat of an equal footing. You got to start somewhere. Business needs money. Starting up in any industry, you need seed money to really get going. And that is our biggest issue that we have, is access to capital.
Yep.
That is the bottom line to where a lot of our problems do exist. And we're not talking about poor folks or whatever. We're looking at your tech people. We're looking at, your top 5% or so in the Black community who are looking to expand greater. These are the problems we're running into.
Oh yeah. Because people don't realize, I think, if you're talking about a deep tech type of business, hey, you've got some technology that's like TRL4 and you want to get it to a prototyping stage and actually go develop it into a product. I mean, you're talking about millions of dollars to do that. Because I think a lot of people start to think that, you're talking about a business. $5,000 here, $10,000. Yeah, if you're doing more of a service-based type of thing where you don't have to actually build any sort of hard tech or a product, yeah, I get it. But even if you're honestly talking about a software-based type of startup, you're still going to be talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, because you're going to need to hire engineers to help you, unless you're going to try to build it yourself, which, it's very, 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 very difficult to build a startup by yourself. If you're talking about, trying to code or build whatever app or this or that, you're going to need engineering talent, as well as you're going to need, marketers, people out there pounding the pavement on leads. So it's a lot more that goes into it than people think.
Absolutely. For a software development company, you're looking at minimum starting up and really moving it well, $5 million. Minimum. And that's small. You're talking about small. Really small. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, Mike, you're in? Okay.
Yep. No, I think you guys hit the nail on the head. This is a good place to close it. Thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button on the way out, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the